Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session in the Get Unstuck series with myself, Sarah Archer. Oh, my dog's just started barking. I am a career and leadership coach, and I work with female leaders to help them create more career success on their terms through either advancing their careers or having more impact and influence in their careers when they're in the job that they want to be in. Obviously, the postman's just arrived, so apologies if you can hear the dog barking. And I created the Get Unstuck series to give you 15 minutes in your week to think about your career, your leadership development, and just to have a bit of space just to focus on what might be important for you. And the topics I cover are varied. They cover a whole variety of different both career and leadership areas, and they're always practical. You can usually find something you can implement straight away. And if you are watching on replay, hello, I have lots of back catalogue on my LinkedIn profile and my YouTube channel. So if there's something you feel like you would like to catch up on, there's lots in there that you can access. And if you're watching with me live, hello, please do say hello. Or if you've got questions or comments about today's topic, then please do pop them in the chat and I will answer them as we're going along. So today we're talking about how to be a more assertive leader. And I know from the work I do with my clients, this comes up a lot. It's tied in with having impact, having influence, and it can sometimes feel really challenging, really hard to do. So I thought it'd be a great topic for us just to explore a little bit more and to think about some techniques that you can try out if this is something that you are finding perhaps is coming up for you at the moment. So let's just look at the definition of assertiveness. So it is a communication style that involves expressing oneself in a direct, honest, and respectful manner. So it's the healthy form of communication style. So it sits between passive communication and aggressive communication. And obviously what I like about this definition is the healthy, honest, respectful part of it, because when we want to be assertive, we want to leave the conversation feeling that we're okay, that we've managed to express ourselves and our views, but also the other person is okay too. So sometimes it can feel that one, particularly in the kind of corporate environment, that one person is going to leave that conversation not okay, that someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. But actually what we want to be aiming for is for everybody to feel okay, that they've been heard, they've been able to express themselves, and a decision has come to that feels okay, even if people don't always agree with it. But that's quite challenging, definitely challenging to do, because people have different approaches and not everyone is going to be approaching that assertive communication style in that way. But obviously, being able to communicate assertively, it is a skill, it can be learned, and it's helpful because it means that we can be heard. We can get our views expressed, our ideas across. We can also communicate what we need and what we want, which is really important, particularly when overwhelm and overload is prevalent in the working world at the moment. So we need to be able to set healthy boundaries. And we also need to be able to communicate confidently, because that then conveys trust, and people can respect us and respect our views. And it just makes it easier to operate in the working world. And as a leader, you're often going to come up against lots of different scenarios where you're going to need to communicate assertively, and some might feel more challenging than others. So from a personal point of view, it could be asking for a pay rise or negotiating promotion. Or it could be things like where you have to negotiate resources for your team or set boundaries for yourself or your team. It might be about standing up for your ideas or your proposals. It might be about negotiating with clients internally and externally. It might be having to kind of manage conflict or disagreement. And there's probably lots of other scenarios too, as well, where as leaders, we have to be assertive. But we can find it difficult to do for a whole variety of reasons, so we can have lots of fears around it. So we might fear that that person won't like us if we raise an objection to what they're suggesting, or we might feel like we might hurt their feelings, or that they might respond aggressively to us or reject us in some way, or people might not think we're committed or capable if we challenge things. Or it might be that you feel like you lack confidence in the very decision that you are contributing to or suggesting, and therefore it's harder to kind of push back or communicate assertively. So it's complicated. It's definitely kind of complex. And you might be facing scenarios where people in the senior team, have reputations for just challenging everything and anything, or, where there are sort of personalities that are particularly difficult or particularly confrontational, which makes it harder to be assertive. And I certainly had that when I was working as a human resources director. The CEO I was reporting to at that time was quite a complex character. She didn't really like people challenging her views. She didn't like other ideas that are beyond her own. And so I found it quite hard to challenge her, because it became a battle. It was definitely not we're going to both leave this conversation with one of us being okay and one of us, or both of us being okay. She definitely turned it into, I need to win this conversation. And so I found it very difficult to be able to communicate assertively with her, because obviously when we're communicating assertively, we want to be communicating on the adult to adult framework. We don't want to be pulled into parent or child. If you know transactional analysis, we want to be communicating adult to adult. And obviously, if you're working with complex or challenging characters, they can pull you into behavior that you don't really want to be pulled into. And so what I learned was a technique called anchoring, which I found very helpful, where what you can do is you can anchor your argument or your view or your idea in some external information that makes it easier then for that other person to see a different point of view, rather than it being a kind of personal battle, if you like. So you can bring in evidence, which might be, well, when I did that survey with employees, it showed X, Y, Z, and that's why we need to put this into practice. Or it might be, the latest thinking from the CIPD was ABC, and that supports why we as an organisation need to move forward with this. And so using that technique with her was really effective, because it allowed her to see that different point of view and it not be about her giving in, if you like. So let me know if this is resonating with you. Maybe you're having to kind of work with complex individuals, but this anchoring technique can work with lots of different scenarios. So it's definitely one to think about experimenting with. But what I want to kind of encourage you to think about to do first of all is just to kind of assess where you are being successfully assertive, because sometimes if we've had an experience where we felt we weren't assertive, it makes us think that we're just generally not assertive. So it's good just to do a check-in of, actually, am I generally communicating assertively, but are there certain scenarios or situations or individuals where I find it harder to be assertive? Because that will give you more balanced view of your level of assertiveness and where you need to direct your energy, because it could be that you just need some help working through with those particular situations. What could I do differently to be more assertive? And you can draw on the fact that you are already communicating assertively. But also just to then do a check-in about your style of communication and thinking about, am I voicing my opinions? Or am I staying silent in certain meetings or conversations? Am I saying yes to things that I really want to say no to? Because if you're answering yes to those questions, it might be that you can slip into a passive communication style. Or ask yourself, in certain meetings or conversations, am I quick to judge or blame others? Do people seem to shy away from having conversations with me or fear having conversations with me? Because if you're answering yes to those, it might be that you're tipping into a more aggressive communication style. But I would also just reflect on that, because sometimes female leaders can be labelled aggressive unhelpfully when actually they are just being assertive. Because we're stepping outside the kind of societal norms of how we should operate. And actually, by labeling as aggressive or bossy or whatever it might be, it's undermining our assertiveness. So I think the aggressive bit I would take with a pinch of salt, and just maybe do, if you have had that label applied to you, a bit more thinking around that, maybe asking someone to give you some objective feedback, someone you trust. And certainly I worked with a client last year on this, and what we did is we found some of her peers who she felt she could trust, who could observe her in certain meetings and situations and give her some objective feedback about how she was actually communicating. And their feedback was very different to the person who told her that she was communicating in an aggressive way. So it's definitely important to just get some perspective on what's going on. And you know yourself as well. You'll know from how people react to you, how you are coming across. And this just gives you then information that you can then think about how you want to adapt your style. And one thing you can do as well is think about being more intentional. So maybe you've identified there are certain meetings or certain individuals that you find it harder to be assertive with. So just taking some intentionality to those meetings. So before you're going into those meetings or conversations, thinking about what is the message that I really want to communicate? Am I being really clear about it? And then thinking about, do I need to be doing any preparation around anchoring? So thinking about that technique of being able to anchor your suggestions, ideas, conversation in some external facts. So going in prepared in case you need to do that. And then also thinking about your body language, because as humans, we respond to body language rather than the verbal message. So if your body language is not communicating confidence, so maybe you're not meeting people's eyes, or maybe your posture is a bit, hunched over, all those things we know, then even if your message is really confident, you're not going to be convincing people of your message because your body language is not congruent to that message. Or if, you are, maybe using your finger, whatever it might be, and you're coming across as maybe more aggressive, then again, the message is going to be heard differently. So you can just do a little bit of checking in about how your body language might be undermining the message that you're trying to convey. And you can then just maybe do some experimentation around, and again, intentionality of, I'm going to really be conscious of my body language in these next conversations or meetings that I'm going to have. And then obviously what we want to try and do as well is thinking about our mindset, because we want to try and remove emotion from the conversation where possible. So if you're going to present a proposal and you want to get buy-in to it, and you've been working on this proposal for weeks and it feels like it's your baby, then there's going to be a lot of emotion attached to that. And if someone challenges you or doesn't agree with what you're proposing, it can feel very personal. And then obviously we tend to react in a different way than if it's more objective. So even just going into that conversation thinking, I'm really open to people asking questions, taking different views, because it will help shape my proposal and make it even better, can just be a more objective stance that you're going into that meeting with than if you hadn't done that kind of mindset prep. So thinking about your messaging, the clarity of it, your body language, and then the kind of mindset, and trying to just diffuse some of the emotion from that conversation. And then there are different types of assertiveness that types of styles that you can experiment with, that I'm just going to give you a very quick whistle-stop tour over or through, that you can think about which ones are the best ones to use for me. Now, when I was doing the research for this, I didn't realize, there were so many things we could, or ways of saying things that could be helpful in different scenarios. So you can take what is useful for you from this. So the first one is called the basic assertiveness style, and that is simply stating what you need. So I need to leave at 5 p.m. today. So just being really clear about what you need. You're not adding anything to it to make it sweeter or softer. You're just going, I need to leave at 5 today. So that's the basic one, very clear communication style. The second one is called an empathic style, which can be really useful, where you're acknowledging what might be going on for the other person, but still communicating what you need assertively. So that might be, I know you're really busy at the moment, but I really need to have some time with you to talk about X. So you're acknowledging that person, maybe it's your boss, is super busy, but you really need something. And then it opens that dialogue, but helps them to feel you do understand what's going on for them. And therefore makes them more open to making room for you in the diary or whatever it might be. The third one is called the consequence style. And this is where you let people know the outcome or the consequence from their action. So this one you might recognize in terms of resources, but I'm not prepared to let my team work with yours on this project until they have access to the same facilities. So you're simply stating that in order for us to work effectively, this is what we need. And it's a consequence if they don't give you what you need. The fourth type is called the discrepancy approach. And this is where there might be conflicting priorities. So this can be really helpful. So you're highlighting a discrepancy. So this can be really good at setting boundaries or getting clarification about what you need. So this might go something like, as I understand it, we agreed project A was the priority, but now you want me to work on project B at the same time. And obviously I need to clarify actually what is the most important thing that you want me to work on. So this is really helpful when you've got mixed messages from your boss or from somebody that you're working alongside potentially, where everything seems to be urgent and they have to make a decision. And you're just highlighting the fact there's a discrepancy here. We need to sort this out. The fifth one is called the negative feelings technique. And this is where you're letting the other person know the impact of their actions on you. And how it makes you feel. So you're not bringing the negative feelings into the conversation. You're just highlighting what happens when they act in the way that they do. So again, this is a good one for sort of boundary setting, managing workload. So this might go something like, when you leave it this late to produce your report, it means I have to work over the weekend, and that makes me feel, insert a feeling, unhappy, sad, angry, whatever it might be. And so in the future, I'd really like you to get your report to me by X time. So that other person might not know that leaving the report so late makes you have to work over the weekend and makes you feel really annoyed. So you're just letting them know how their action makes you feel. And it's just super clear for them. And it also means that you're setting clear boundaries for them. And then the final style is called the broken record. And if you're a parent, you will be familiar with this because children are absolute experts in the broken record technique. And this is where you are simply repeating your statement when someone continues to ask you to do something. So this is quite a simple example, but you could apply it in lots of different scenarios. So it might be that, say, you're asked to work late because something's overrunning or whatever. So your boss says, I need you to work late tonight because we need to get this piece of work finished. And you would simply say, I'm really sorry, but I have a commitment tonight. And they say, look, you're going to let the team down if you don't do this. Everybody else is mucking in. And you just say, I'm really sorry, but I have a commitment tonight. I can't get out of it. And then they say, look, I can give you time off next week, or, we've got a bonus coming up, whatever it might be. And you're like, I would really, love to help, but I have a commitment. I normally would do this, but I can't get out of this commitment. I'm really sorry. So you're just repeating the statement over and over again, so it's super clear for them, because sometimes people will try and persuade you when you've made a clear assertive statement, and it's just a good way to just keep reiterating that you can't do the thing that they're asking you to do. So I hope that's given you a lot of food for thought. We've gone slightly over today because normally my sessions are 15 minutes. We've gone to 20, but there's so much richness in here. So just to remind you, so first of all, think about, when am I being assertive? Get some perspective on it. It might only be certain situations or certain conversations or people where you find it harder to be assertive as a leader. Secondly is just thinking about, when I'm not being assertive, am I slipping into aggressive or passive communication? And just getting some extra feedback if perhaps you feel you're being labelled as aggressive, but it's not necessarily aggressive. And then starting to think about being intentional in the sessions or the times when you want to be assertive, thinking about your body language, your messaging, and maybe thinking about whether you want to try and use the anchoring technique, if that would be helpful. And then when you can, just then thinking about trying out maybe some of these assertiveness styles, the 6 that I've mentioned to you, which I've now got to try and remember. So we've got the basic style, the empathetic style, the consequence style, the discrepancy approach, the negative feelings technique, and the broken record. I would love to know how you get on, if you try them out, how it goes. And obviously, this is an area that I do work with female leaders on. So if there's something that you want some support with, because it can be challenging, and it's something that once you've mastered, it's just, there to help you then have more impact and influence, then please do get in touch. I'd love to have a chat with you about that. And I'll be back next week at 12:15 for another session in the Get Unstuck series. Have a fantastic week. Thank you for joining me.